We'll call this meeting of Privileges and Elections Subcommittee number 2 to order. We have 5 bills on our docket this morning. I think 3 of which we've seen either identical or similar, and 2 which I do not think we've seen up to this point. So, I saw Senator McPike, Senate Bill 1053. Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Senate Bill 1053 requires, much like we do now, we file all of our campaign finance reports electronically. So this applies to all also local candidates throughout the Commonwealth. It does provide an exemption in case there's any broadband connectivity issues. And so a candidate can file with the board saying, I don't have regular access to internet, and therefore they can still file the same way they do today. And so that is really the basics of the bill. We've been doing it now for, 15 years, filing statements electronically. It now applies that to all of the local government offices as well. And again, I heard concerns last year in discussing this. What about people, even though we're expanding broadband, hasn't hit all parts of the Commonwealth yet. So we've written in an exclusion in those cases where the candidate can simply fill out a form, submit it to the board saying, I don't have regular access, and therefore I'm going to continue to file the way I do today. And that is the bill, Mr. Chairman.
All right, are there any questions of Senator McPike? Delegate Waxman.
I've just got a little bit of concern. At our level, most of us have treasurers that can handle those things for us. At the local level, when we're talking about school board members, board of supervisors, and sheriffs, I've just not gotten a really good feel that they will be able to do that. It seems like it might be another barrier for them to consider running. And I'm just saying this more recently because I've got somebody that's thinking about running for the local board of supervisors, and he's having difficulty getting things like voter registration lists and all that. Just as a first-time person running, I'm concerned that might be a little bit of an extra barrier to them deciding to run.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that thought. So if you look at Comet, and I've used Comet for simple entries, it is a very simple form. Even you don't need like the fancy. Some of you may have fancy fundraising software that then imports and all that stuff. Comet's actually set up to do very simple entries. If you've got a $200 donation, you simply type it in the name, and it submits as a part of the process. And so the Board of Elections website and the Comet system they use is a super simple process. You don't need a treasurer if you have limited access. Not only that, but you do have inactivity and thresholds where you don't have to file anyway. And so it is pretty simple, like a how-to sort of system right now. So if you don't have a lot of entries, it takes a few minutes to fill out your form and submit it electronically. So in some ways it's a little easier. So you don't have to drive it or mail it or anything like that. So that's what I would offer. And there is no fiscal impact because the system's set up to accept any candidates as it is today.
Delegate Maldonado.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the patron. I'd like to thank the patron for bringing forward this bill. What I appreciate about it is giving the exceptions for folks who can't do this, and so that it doesn't adversely impact. I think by nature, the whole process is a little confusing and daunting for people who are doing it for the first time, or the second time, or the third time. So the question I have for you is, with this kind of streamlining, but also allowing people who don't have the ability to comply to be able to proceed the way they always do, if you are noticing in other jurisdictions whether there's a trend of sort of coming online in this way that you're proposing to streamline the process in other jurisdictions or other states or however.
Mr. Chairman, the delegate, can you rephrase the question?
Sure. I was just wondering if you were seeing what you're trying to do here being done in other places.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the clarification. So there's actually, you probably see the VPAP reports right now, and so you already see multiple local candidates for offices already file that way. So it's already happening in Virginia. This moves it forward to increase transparency and see that folks who just don't want to go down to the local office to see whose, contributions and the rest of it from local government office have access to it. I mean, we think of ourselves as really important in the General Assembly in making lots of billions of decisions, but frankly, local government have probably tenfold in terms of the amount of land use decisions and other things, and for transparency purposes, I think it's important that we increase it. Watching different boards of supervisors, we know land use decisions are the bread and butter. I don't want to do zoning from here. That's their job. However, there's a lot of folks that understand that there are really important decisions that are made, and they want transparency associated with those decisions, and this helps to do that.
All right, any further questions? Anybody here wish to speak in favor of the bill? Anybody wish to speak in opposition?
Move to report the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion.
A motion made, properly seconded to pass by indefinitely Senate Bill 1053. Members wishing to vote on the voting board.
Oh, we did.
Clerk will close the roll. Senate Bill 1053 is passed by indefinitely by a vote of 4-3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Next bill on our docket, Senate Bill 1427, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our campaign finance system here in Virginia is based on a transparency model, which is the idea that everyone, we permit a significant amount of activity, but everyone should get to know who's taking that activity and might be trying to influence the election. We've done a pretty good job of setting up the system regarding individual campaigns, but there's a significant dark spot of where there's not transparency when it comes to political action committees. This bill seeks to address that through two things. One is it would put political action committees on the same footing as campaigns in the fall elections for having to report the $1,000 contributions of late activity. It also seeks to do that in the spring, and it also seeks to add a fifth reporting period. We, of course, campaign more and have campaign finance reports more than 5 times in the years we run, but PACs every year only file quarterly. The problem with that is a PAC can be created April 2nd. That's called Progressive Accountability Action. And another one could be Conservative Accountability Action that same day. It's April 2nd. These PACs both have significant money. The progressive one goes and plays in Democratic primaries, suggests perhaps that some legislators in very left-leaning districts aren't as progressive as they ought to be, and seeks to hold them accountable. At the same time, a group on the right is doing the exact same thing and saying they're not pro-gun and pro-gun rights enough, and this is no good. And each of them, these PACs are successful in advocating their issues that seem contradictory, and then we find out July 16th, 15th or 16th, depending if it falls on a Sunday or Saturday, that they might have actually been the exact same interest all along. And we never knew who was funding it. Even though they started on April 2nd, they had a robust participation throughout the primary season. And we found out who their first donor was 3 weeks after the primary results have concluded. That is something that has happened in other states in the primaries, which is why I seek to do this in the primaries. There's been several times that things have looked like ideological PACs, only to be discovered that they actually are a group that has nothing to do with that specific ideology that was advocated in the primary, and that they actually had a completely unrelated grievance against who they were attacking. It's also very similar to what happened in the general election against then Mr. Youngkin as he campaigned for governor. In my part of the state, a political action committee sent out lots of text messages to conservative voters in the most conservative parts of conservative counties, saying that Governor Youngkin was not conservative enough on the Second Amendment and would not stand up for it. No one knew who this PAC was for several weeks, and then late in the campaign found out that it was actually sponsored by exclusively by a company that disagreed with him on issues completely unrelated. So it will surprise no one to know that the governor is supportive of this effort. And to the meat of the bill, when you look at it, you'll see the two distinct sections. One starting at line 26, it describes the late activity section, which is similar to what we have in our elections. And then if you look over at beginning at lines, that's line 72. At lines 26, it discusses the additional reporting period.
So Senator, so I'm looking at your floor substitute. So does it, in the end, add one additional report and then changes the dates of the others?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions of Senator Suderline?
Move the amendment.
I don't think we have. I think that came over from the Senate, so it's already there. You don't have an amendment here today, though, do you?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. I don't see any questions. Do we have anyone here wish to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone in opposition?
I think there's, I guess.
Do you have the same testimony on the Senate side?
Yes. Some of those people are people I have not met before, but I remember them speaking. Oh, there's someone I do know up there. But they're people that spoke in favor of it. I've not met anyone opposed to it, but you never know when that will happen.
You never
Sometimes
know.
happens when you're standing right here.
Occasionally. All right. Committee operates by motion. Been a motion made, properly seconded, to recommend for reporting Senate Bill 1427. Members wishing to vote on the voting board. Clerk will close the roll. House Bill 1427 fails to report 3-3.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next on the list, Senate Bill 1431, Senator Serville. And I think this is one of the ones that we've heard at least a similar one of, so
Right.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is very similar, I think, Delegate Williams' bill, which we heard yesterday in P&E, where he, in the Senate, where he conformed his bill to mine. I made a couple small amendments. But the original bill was a Boyd-Graves recommendation. And basically, all it does is tries to confirm what existing law is. The current removal statute, which does not apply to the governor, lieutenant governor, the AG, or folks in your chamber or our chamber. It only applies to local government officials. It was written back in the 1900s, and it has a lot of ambiguities in it. There's been about 6 or 7 Supreme Court cases which have clarified what it meant, and the Boyd-Graves Commission attempted to take those Supreme Court cases and reflect it in codes so that we'd have less confusion about what the statute really means, which would hopefully result in sort of fewer, I won't exactly call them frivolous, but sort of misinformed petitions that people go through a lot of effort and then end up getting dismissed in court because it doesn't meet the terms of the law, because people don't go out and read 1920 Supreme Court cases. So that's basically what it does. I can get into the specifics about what it does if you'd like, but I know you've heard it before. And again, I think Delegate Williams thinks that the edits I made are fine, so I don't think it needs any amendments. But
Delegate Williams, I see you in the queue.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we jokingly tried to speed this along yesterday, and it just was a big fumble, so I also agree, and it does. They are fairly identical, and I found that amendment friendly, so speaking to the bill, motion when appropriate.
Okay. Do we have anyone here who wish to speak in favor? Opposition? All right, you've heard the meat of the bill before. You have the House patron who says that the amendments are friendly. I don't know if I trust two attorneys talking between each other about this, but that's okay. All right, any further questions? Committee operates per motion.
Move to report.
Motion made, properly seconded, to recommend for reporting Senate Bill 1427. Members wishing to vote, vote on the voting board.
Oh, sorry.
All right, now we're voting on Senate Bill 1431. Clerk will close the roll. Senate Bill 1431 is recommended for reporting 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senate Bill 1471, Senator Boysko.
Good morning.
And is this similar
It's
or at least
similar, but
identical to Delegate
it's similar.
Cherry's bill?
It's not
Not
identical.
identical?
We
Okay.
put some more clarifying language in it.
Okay.
This is the bill that would put some guardrails on how we spend our campaign money right now. Any of us could take our family and friends on a Caribbean cruise or a vacation to Europe if we choose. This would make some limitations on how we can spend our contributions that we have in our election funds. It adds the federal definition of personal use, and that's known as the irrespective test. Under this definition, any expense that would exist, regardless of whether or not a campaign is in action or not, would be ineligible for use of campaign funds. So, like my home mortgage, I would not be able to use campaign funds to pay my home mortgage. However, my campaign office or my legislative office would qualify. If you're using your car to drive to campaign events, it doesn't mean that campaign funds can be used to pay your monthly car payment. But if you were traveling for a campaign, a logistical, for a campaign reason, you could use it to pay for a toll, for instance. But it wouldn't be, we've had members who were serving in the House of Delegates previously who spent all kinds of their campaign funds to pay for their personal expenses and really took advantage of this. That person's no longer in office. But this, this would allow also people who have dependent care, which is different than Delegate Cherry's. So if you have a small child or you're caring for an elderly family member and you're out on the campaign trail, this would be a legitimate use of your campaign funds as well. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that this was not successful in the previous version. We did add language, I believe 525 to the end of the 542. We inserted that the regulations adopted pursuant to the second enactment shall include regulations substantially similar to the FEC under 11 CFR 112 with respect to advisory opinions and 11 CFR 113 with respect to prohibition on campaign funds. The regulation shall also include adoption of past closed matters under review and advisory options of the FEC on matters related to the prohibition of personal campaign funds under federal law as precedent for any future decisions by the State Board of Elections with respect to analogous state laws. And that seemed to make people more comfortable because there is some precedent at the federal level. We are one of very few states in the country who do not really have any limitations on how we spend our campaign funds.
All right, questions from committee members. Delegate Williams.
I was wondering, this would impact the Department of Elections, I believe, and thus, is there someone here to speak to that, or has there been conversations about that with, or these changes and the work that they have to do if this was expanded?
This would have, the FIS, I don't know that anybody from, yes, I do have someone here who could speak to that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I also keep hitting the fiscal impact button, and it pulls up something from the Virginia criminal. Okay, I found it.
All right, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, the Department of Elections takes no position on this bill. However, depending on the volume of complaints and the advisory opinions requested, significant resources will be demanded on both campaign finance staff as well as the policy team, just for overseeing this process. So it will likely require a FTE.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from committee members?
Mr. Chairman,
Delegate Sickles.
I just want to speak to the bill at the appropriate time.
Okay. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Do we have anybody here in favor? Anybody in opposition? Delegate Sickles.
Well, I think I'm amazed that we can't pass a bill like this. I think the public expects this of us. I think we would look poorly on people and our colleagues that did not do this, that use these campaign funds for personal use. And it astounds me that we can't pass legislation like this. I know it's going to go down, but I just wanted to say that. It's just one of those things that's stunning to me, and I hope y'all have a miracle here and change and pass this bill that's been well thought out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Williams.
Mr. Chair, question for council. Have there been any changes to personal campaign finance prohibitions or use of personal campaign funds within the last 5 years when the Democratic Party had all three branches of government available to them to change whatever rules they'd like?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Williams, no, there has not been any changes in this area of allotting time recently.
All right.
Delegate Munden King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the bill.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to thank you for doing the work on this. When we had the bipartisan version with Delegates Cherry and Simon, I thought we had a great bill then, but it seems like you've put even more work into it. So I want to thank you for that. And I also want to say that people don't send us here to say who did this, who did what did they do. They want us to take action and represent the interests of our communities now. So thank you for doing that and bringing this forward. And also, I just think that this is common sense, that we should, give confidence to all of those around us that we're doing the right thing. So thank you so much for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions of the patron?
So, Mr. Chair, I would just point out that we are outliers in the country for not making these changes, putting any limitations. I have supported this bill every year I've been in office and had an opportunity to. This should not be a partisan issue. And as you're aware, excuse me, there are a majority of Democrats in the Senate. There are a majority of Republicans in the House. A Republican carried this bill. We have been working together through the year. This is something that I believe the public would like to have some confidence. And again, just a couple of years ago, there was a member of the House of Delegates who spent his campaign money on all sorts of things that were inappropriate. He was a member of my party. I disagree with that. I think we need to hold ourselves accountable so that people have confidence in us. We are watching the public confidence in elected officials at a low. And this is a simple thing that we can do, working collaboratively together to say, you know what, we're going to put some restrictions on how we spend our campaign money and not make people think that we are taking advantage of the system. And I just urge you to vote for this.
Senator, would you say that, and I don't want to name names, I think I can guess who you're talking about, and I did not follow that primary race particularly closely. Nevertheless, I guess my question is, did his expenditures, which were what's called questionable, that were then reported, become an issue in that primary?
I think that, Mr. Chairman, I believe that when we see people taking advantage of the system,
Right.
that's always a problem of ethics. And I think that we all need to hold ourselves to a higher standard so that people don't question, whether or not we have integrity. That spills over to all of us. One bad apple does do a lot of damage.
Sure.
I hope that you'll consider moving the bill forward.
All right, I don't see any further questions in the queue. Committee operates by motion. And a motion made, properly seconded, to lay Senate Bill 1471 on the table. Members wishing to vote, please vote on the voting board. Clerk will close the roll. Senate Bill 1471 is laid on the table. I vote a 5-3.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a good
Senator.
day.
And the last bill on the docket, Senate Bill 854. And Senator, you can,
This bill is identical to your House Bill
identical, okay.
1551. So,
okay, I knew it was at least similar, but,
yeah,
okay.
it's identical, but I will be
Okay.
very, very brief.
All right.
This has to do with third parties, so these would be organizations not affiliated with a candidate or a referendum advocacy group. It creates a definition of electioneering communication. And essentially says that if any advertisement that is intended to influence the outcome of an election, whether it be the candidate or referendum question, whether the communication is virtual or on a traditional platform like broadcast TV, the bill then would require the third-party organization to report the top 3 donors. That's this bill. There is no burden on the candidate. This is only the third-party organization that would have the burden of reporting. And the value of this bill is it gives our voters some sense of who is behind the effort. So often where the money flows is really where the interest lies. And this is intended to give voters more complete information. That's the only purpose here. I would hope that you've had a change of heart since you heard HB 1551. I do note that there are a few advocates I've been working with, that organization Money Out and a couple of other groups. I think they're on the virtual platform. I don't know if you're taking virtual comment.
All right, do we have any questions from committee members? All right, anyone here wish to speak in favor? Anyone in opposition? I think we heard from all of these organizations on Delegate Helmer's bill, but if you reference Money Out, would you like to hear from Ms. Morgan?
Yes, if you would,
Okay.
she's on the
All right.
platform. I think she would like to say a few words.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Nancy Morgan, one of the coordinators of Big Money Out. We're a nonpartisan group that looks at campaign finance reform. And we really support this bill. We call it the Virginia Sunshine Bill. And we should remember that a lot of the provisions of the 2021 subcommittee, bicameral, bipartisan, spent a lot of time on the provisions. This bill was assisted by expert national assistance by the Campaign Legal Center. And these provisions have been adopted by other states like Arizona, Alaska, and Rhode Island, all of which require the disclosure of the top 3 donors. Just to remind you, as I mentioned last year in Citizens United, there was an 8-to-1 vote which supports disclosure. Why do they support disclosure? Because we need to have total disclosure, which is important for the public interest. And you are all here today at 7 in the morning, as I'm representing the citizens of your district, agree with the importance of public interest. So we hope that you pass this bill. This bill helps protect you. There will be dark money coming into this most competitive primary season, and probably in our whole history with redistricting, and it will help you in order to identify dark money attack ads. So please, we really hope that you'll pass this. The track record of this committee isn't, I mean, we're really a little bit stunned, but you'll probably vote it down 5-3, but this is a good bill for Virginia. It's a win-win for legislators and citizens. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Any further questions of the patron? Have anything you'd like to add, Senator?
I think I've given you a sense of the bill, and I know you've had a previous hearing, so there's nothing more I would like to add.
All right, thank you. Delegate Williams?
Mr. Chair, for all the previous reasons stated over the last 2 years, I move to pass by indefinitely.
Been a motion made, properly seconded to pass by Senate Bill 854 indefinitely. Members wishing to vote, please vote on the voting board. Clerk will close the roll. Senate Bill 854 is passed by indefinitely by a vote of 5-3. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, being no further business before the subcommittee, we're adjourned.